that the issues can be dealt with in full, because it's one of the things that really that we need to be sure of. Oh, good morning, and you're very welcome to this, the first of a series of live breakfast webcasts dealing with the issue of organisational change. Organisational change is something, I suppose, that's happening to everybody at the moment, to the extent that the company that you were last year is definitely not the one that you are today, given in the current circumstances, certainly. And the company going to be next year probably is not the one that you are today either. So change is an inevitability, and it's something that all companies are dealing with and grappling with. So we thought what we would do is we'd do a series of these breakfast webcasts dealing with the various different elements of that. And we got here with us a panel of people to deal with it over the series that we're going to do. You'll see, for instance, on your site here, you will see that there are a number of people here who are going to deal with this. Their CVs are there and their profiles are there, so you will see their associates of Communicate International who are all hugely experienced in this area. So what we want you to do is want you to engage with this as well, because it's not a one-way thing. This is as you can see, a breakfast webcast. We're having our breakfast, you're probably having your breakfast as well. So we want you to engage with us to the extent that you can actually contact us live on air. Again, by getting onto your computer here, and in between the weekly series, you can also get in touch with us by email. And we think this needs to be driven as much by you as it is by us. There are things we want to talk about, but we'll be guided a lot by what you want to talk about as well. So today, my name is Peter Finnegan. I'm the Managing Director of Communicate International, and the two gurus we have today. You would be gurus, wouldn't you guys? To some extent.
Small G.
We've got Mick O'Connell here and John Guinan, both of them steeped in the whole element of change and organisational change, and to share some of the experiences that they have, the same experience that I have, and between us, and perhaps you might share yours with us as well. But I suppose one of the things, guys, that looking at change now as compared to, say, a number of years ago, the context is different. The context itself has changed quite a lot, hasn't it?
I suppose the current economic environment has
the cake,
if you want to call it that, has really changed the ball game. Whereas before you had plenty of time to plan your change, weeks, months even, and come up with your plan and communicate it and go through all the steps. Nowadays it's been driven very much by the bottom line, by the change in business, by the loss of business, by a lack of demand, and by the shift in business. I mean, there's one construction company I'm involved with, and their business was totally in Ireland up to a year and a half ago. Now it's maybe totally overseas, and that, even though the staff are probably the same, they're reduced in number, but they've had to travel and travel very far overseas. So the business environment has changed, and therefore your planning of change timetable is being vastly reduced.
Yeah, I think one of the things that hit some companies really hard is the pace at which everything flipped almost. You could have had a full order book. I was with a company there about 2 weeks ago. The managing director, he was telling me it all happened in 6 weeks. He had a full order book and he tracked his changes over 6 weeks, and half of his business disappeared. So you can imagine, first of all, even the impact that has on a person personally, that might even in itself affect their ability to manage it, because it's a disorientating actual experience for him.
Yeah, and lots of people, I suppose, when you look at management today, a lot of the managers today would have been people who came up through the good times, and were managing growth, and suddenly, literally suddenly, tire marks on the streets outside, the way the thing stopped. They're now dealing with totally different issues.
It's very true, and I suppose a lot of senior managers, and you look at it in the context of change, a lot of human resource departments, where in many instances geared towards recruitment, that it was grow. Your target as a department is actually to get X number of people in with certain skills by a certain time. Very low emphasis on not necessarily employee relations, but industrial relations, because the emphasis was on growth with full employment.
And retention.
Retention was a huge issue.
Retention was a huge issue.
And as you say, selection. I mean, turnover rocketed as people moved around. So just getting and sourcing staff were the challenges for the HR manager. Whereas now it's maybe the very opposite. It's delayering, it's refocusing the business, it's reducing costs, it's reducing wages, and these are some of the topics I think we probably should get into in a few weeks.
And a huge part of it being in and around the area of redundancies, because that is sadly a key part of what's going on. And again, a lot of skill needed there that perhaps there isn't in some of the companies at the moment.
Yes, I think it's just that the last 10 years hasn't equipped them, in some instances at least, to actually deal with the challenges they're now facing. Yeah.
Also, of course, there are examples of companies that are doing well. I'm working with a company at the moment who's doing very well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
In fact, they're leaders in their own sector, and we are doing a program with them at the moment to try and figure out how they can be better and how they can be ahead and how they can stay ahead. So it's not all about necessarily people who are in a negative situation, although probably most people are.
At the moment, I think they are. Whereas the challenge before was, why should we change? Now it's an imperative that we do change.
Okay, changing isn't a science. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, it's not a science. In fact, I mean, a lot of the research you look at in change would more and more highlight that in many respects it's a quite irrational process and also an unpredictable process. And those of us who have the scars of battle from being involved in change projects will know exactly what the research is saying, because you might set out with a clear plan, but very quickly you find out unexpected events are part and parcel of change.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question is, you start off with, well, what has to change?
Yeah.
And having struggled through that and worked it out, you're moving on to then, well, when are we going to change? And how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
And have we the capability to do it?
Yeah.
Because again, going back to the capabilities and the competencies of the organisation are probably developed for a growth economy. And what we need going forward are very different competencies. So that brings up the issue is, have we got the management team that will be able to facilitate this change and above all lead it?
Yeah, and we'll go to that in a minute, but one of the things I think that we have found, and the research says, I mean, let's see, does the reality bear it out, that lots of change programs actually fail.
Yeah, they do. Well, McKinsey's did a big body of research about 2 years ago, and they interviewed 3,500 executives all around the world, and they said 2/3 of those executives said that only 1 in every 3 transformation programs succeeds with the objectives that it's set out to achieve. So in other words, for the other 2, there may have been varying levels of success or failure. Hard to believe, maybe.
One in three seems very few. What do you think?
I think change is difficult, and I mean, if that's what the survey's coming up with, I'd be inclined to agree with it. It's probably worth looking at why maybe the reasons it doesn't, because a lot of the time people fail to sustain change. That they make a plan, they do some communication, people are probably not totally bought into it. In fact, there's some research by Enoch Akabadze, from Professor of Organisation Development in Cranfield, which suggests that about 38% of management teams under the table don't support change, the change plan. And that's a frightening figure.
Yeah.